John Kurtz back with you live at Big 12 Media Days. We are on Radio Row in Las Vegas, and I am now joined by the CMO of the Big 12. It's Tyrel Kirkham. Really appreciate you taking some time for me, man.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me.
So you go back with Brett Yormark, obviously, to your days with the Brooklyn Nets, and I found it interesting. We were talking about this. I've asked so many ADs this week about working with Brett, and they talk about just what a strong personality he is, how effective he is at what he does. And you told me you basically took the job sight unseen because of him, right? Just tell me about your experience with Brett and your relationship with him.
Yeah, some call him Commissioner. I call him Brett. We have a first name basis relationship, but the Commissioner's been very good to me. I was a young pup coming out of the New York Mets organization after 8 years, trying to find myself in a couple of different roles. And he took a chance on me in 2012 and hired me with the Brooklyn Nets when he was CEO. And, it was an opportunity for me to take the young lad and grow into a polished executive. And he promised me that during the interview, and he's over-delivered on said promise. He's been with me every step of my journey, even when I left the Nets after 6 years and took a trip out west to work for the Los Angeles Rams. He remained through and through a true mentor and leader, and someone that I consider family as much as a friend.
What was his pitch for this job with the Big 12? Like, what are the main objectives for you in this position?
First and foremost, he knows my fulfillment comes with pushing boundaries, being a disruptor, and much of that I learned from him. But in the creative space, in the brand building, and connecting with new audiences, and he said he wanted to come in the collegiate space and create some noise, be disruptive, give future student athletes a sense of aspiration and hope to be a part of this conference. And he said you could be there at the center of it as the first ever CMO. And utilize some of those same principles you've done in other markets, but bring it to the collegiate space with a fresh new perspective. And that was really enticing because I know Brett never dips his toe in the water. It's all about jumping all the way in. And to have that autonomy to thrive in this type of environment, given where the current landscape is, it was a no-brainer.
I know he said, I think it was a media day either last year or 2 years ago, younger, hipper, cooler was what he wanted the Big 12 to be, right? So as the CMO, like what does that mean to you?
First off, I wasn't officially on board when he said that because I probably would have wordsmithed it just a bit.
Okay.
But nonetheless, it was in his brand, younger, hipper, cooler. But what that means is you don't alienate yourself from your existing base. Our existing base is a core part of our success. What younger, hipper, cooler means is how do we contemporize this brand to a point where we can have new audiences come in, whether it's a Bathing Ape partnership with their logo on the field or Nelly performing at halftime or going to Rucker Park. Those are all deliberate attempts to grow our base, to ensure that we're bringing in casual fans to tune in. It was such a refreshing thing to see during the football championship that we peaked at halftime when Nelly performed. So the metrics support the decisions that we're making. The WWE partnerships, our greatest content to date as far as engagement rate is a post with the Undertaker.
Okay.
So those are things that are all intentional. They intersect because we look at, I always like to reference the NBA. It's the arrival galleries and the brand that they're wearing are almost equally as important as the buckets they're scoring on the court. And we just have to live at that intersection, not lose sight of the sport, but find those things that complement it and bring those fans along for the ride.
Yeah, well, you just brought up some of the metrics, right? So what have you seen metric-wise? Like, how has this grown in your time? What's the most impressive thing?
I mean, just the rapid rate of growth on social, both in followers, in video views, in overall engagement. And we see a continual push forward, just given realignment. Some would think that you'd lose some of your followers. It's been the exact opposite. We've gained considerably since Brett took the helm, and it's something that we continue to monitor on a weekly basis because we're going to fish where the fish are and continue to give the people what they covet. And the metrics support that. So whether it's the tune in for a certain initiative or social engagement or Shaquille O'Neal, 14,000 people at Kansas City Live during our men's basketball championship, those are all metrics that justify and validate all the great work that we're doing.
Do you guys talk at all about like, hey, we can't do things the same way like the Big Ten and the SEC do right now because they've kind of got that market cornered? We've got to be, when you say disruptor, like different. How much does that come into play when you think about your strategy?
Yeah, our strategy is our strategy, and I typically don't think about any of the outside factors. I just, Brett said it yesterday, and we wholeheartedly believe it as a conference. We want to be the best version of ourselves. And ourselves made on paper look different than everyone else because we're going about it differently, but that's strictly based off of our brand principles, our core tenets that make us who we are. I certainly pay attention and admire those other conferences and their approach and leaning into their audiences the way they do. But we think we're cut from a different cloth, and that affords us some additional luxuries to push. I don't know if there's many others that would sign up for Bathing Apes and WWE on the field, or you don't have a team in the market of New York, but you still show up at Rucker Park. Again, all done with intentionality as we think about how to continue to build this thing that is the wonderful Big 12.
I know there may be specifics you can't get into on this front, but when you think about like naming rights for the conference and what brand value, what kind of brand equity is in the name of the conference, how do you evaluate what is the value tangibly that we can give to the schools with the naming rights versus just whatever brand equity we have built up in the name?
Yeah, as the brand guy, I sit and wait for whatever may shake out. I think just on the naming rights or anything else that's been reported, as Brett mentioned, it's incumbent upon us as a conference to always bring our institutions optionality.
Yeah.
With that, there comes a vetting that needs to be done. And from a brand perspective, when the time comes, we'll look at everything imaginable of the equity that's been built within the Big 12. How do you preserve as much of that in anything that we decide to do, right? There's the same conversation that comes up. If, what does it mean when you start bringing brands onto the field, for your championships, right? WWE, some questioned whether or not that was the right brand fit. We soon found out that would be the case. And the same holds true for any other future changes that we would make. It's all about vetting, doing your due diligence, allowing a lot of people in the room to weigh in. That's why we have such a good AD room, a great president room, and the rest of our governing groups to really provide that feedback. And then when you think about the way we've evolved as a conference to have our business advisory board coupled with our our alumni council that we announced early today, those all serve as sounding boards to help pressure test things that we're working on, regardless it is. And we can all walk out of that room nodding in agreement that we vetted it to the best of our ability. We'll then pursue that opportunity knowing that we feel like we've done our due diligence.
Yeah. Internationally, making that push like to Mexico that we've seen, what is the potential that you see there?
I mean, I love Mexico City. We've spent some significant time there as a conference, just understanding the lay of the land. It's a very rich and vibrant market that has a love for American sports or sports as a whole. For us, the collegiate space is certainly new to the market, and there has been a lot of education and excitement around bringing the collegiate experience from the U.S. to Mexico. We're never going to lose sight of continuing to build our brand nationally, but when there are these unique opportunities, especially when you think about the proximity of Texas Tech and Arizona institutions, as well as Houston, UCF being a Hispanic serving institution, there's a lot of synergy that we should explore, and that's why we've vetted the conversation and have continued to explore those opportunities, just given those aforementioned opportunities. The other thing, just internationally, thinking through, the K-State Iowa State game that's going to be played in Ireland next year. Just anytime you can grow the brand and there's new folks that are paying attention to you outside of your country, it just opens up a world of opportunity for recruiting, for incremental commercialization opportunities, for obviously brand building. And that's why we've got to go through and vet all these wonderful things that are in front of us to continue to build a brand.
Yeah. I'm curious with the Big 12, obviously you guys have the best basketball conference in America, and football is what people tend to think of, particularly in a realignment sense here. But how much do you guys lean into basketball, and what are the ways that you really try and leverage that as much as you possibly can?
And our basketball product speaks for itself. We leverage the parody, and we had a song that dropped a couple years ago, No Nights Off. It certainly was a truest statement that we could come up with to speak to just how tough and rigorous of a fight it is on a nightly basis. When we think about that brand, we think about the future stars of tomorrow and hopefully the NBA, as well as just a good brand of basketball that makes a casual fan come into the pipeline. We know football certainly rules the roost, and we will never shy away from it, but to have such a strong basketball program that complements the deepest football conference in the country, we think that that's a competitive advantage. It's something that we continue to sing from the mountaintops. And, you saw it last year, 8 teams getting in, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about our women's program as well. 7 teams getting into the tournament. We're only getting better in women's basketball. We think about West Virginia and the season they had, K-State, and the season they had, Audie Crooks. I mean, TCU reloaded this offseason. There's just such a strong basketball narrative that exists. We have the best basketball championship when you think about what Kansas City provides to our entire Big 12 community, not just those that live in Ames or Lawrence, or so it's really just an opportunity for us to highlight all the great things about our basketball programs. We're really excited for this next chapter, just given the welcoming of the 4 new corners and how they make us better.
Really glad that you mentioned women's basketball, because with like Caitlin Clark and everything that's happened with the popularity of that sport in the last couple of years, how much do your eyes light up when you think about the possibilities there?
I mean, I love the women's game. I grew up in New York when the Liberty were the Liberty, and watching Rebecca Lobo and those rosters, Teresa Witherspoon, etc. So to see the game getting the love it deserves, because it's long been a great game. It's just took some bigger than life individuals to provide some additional light on it, and we'll welcome that for the greater good of the game. For us as a conference, there's a major shift in our focus to double down, triple down on our commitment to women's hoops. Brett mentioned yesterday some of our staffing changes. So Dana, who previously oversaw all Olympic sports, will now be the dedicated and have dedicated oversight of women's basketball, which is going to be tremendous for us. Knowing her expertise and her focus on that, in partnership with the marketing group and competition and the rest of the competition team, we really think we can utilize women's basketball as yet another point of differentiation for us as we think about us being the best conference in America.
All right, so coming up in the next year, what are you most excited about from a marketing standpoint with the league?
I mean, I get excited about no 2 days being alike, and every day with Brett Yormark at the helm, an opportunity to push boundaries. I'm excited to run back our football championship this year and build our football narrative. We partnered with TuneIn Radio yesterday that we're excited about, and just to enhance our national narrative. We are looking at some other sort of network opportunities that are part of the enhancement of the football narrative and our conference narrative as a whole. November, Brett talked about the race to the championship. I'm excited because there's going to be so many possibilities. We'll not have a winner, clear-cut winner come November 1, and the fact that we can build equity across the month and getting people hyped and excited about what we have to offer is great. And then we get into our championships, which championships have greater ramifications this year because we're in a 12-team playoff, and what that means, hopefully we're knocking on a door with more than one team in consideration. In that month of December, when you think about that, our championship, CFP, just bowl season as a whole, and 12-12 day, which we introduced last year, is our sort of conference-wide holiday. Hopefully we're getting close to a football schedule release in December, January timeframe. All things that as a marketer I get really excited about. And then when you get into the first quarter of the Big 12 2025 calendar year, can't help but think about all of our basketball championships and obviously baseball, softball, and all of our other winter and spring activities. So there's no shortage of things to do when you're working at the Big 12, especially from a marketing perspective. But we're really hyped about what's in store, and love to keep people on the edge of their seats, wondering what's next.
Last thing for you, do you have a good Brett Yormark story that kind of embodies like who he is and how dynamic of a worker he is, and just in the space?
I probably have 1,000 of them. I mean, I've been with the guy. I've traveled the world 17 times over with them. When you think about all the international play that we did with the Brooklyn Nets, but I think for me, it's the times that I haven't spent with him where I wasn't a direct employee, where I'd get the calls on a random Saturday morning just to check on myself and my wife, who he actually hired back in the day because she worked for the New Jersey Nets. So there's a long-standing relationship there, but it's the human side of him that I appreciate the most, of the check-ins. I recently had my first child, and his love and support for that, and the commitment to say, you need to go be a father, enjoy fatherhood, and I promise you, as much as you are my right-hand man, I'm going to let you enjoy those 6 weeks of your life to celebrate this moment. And maybe those are some of the things that people don't get a chance to see often, or just because he's so intense on the business front. But there's a human side, and there's things like, the first and last call of every one of his days is with his daughter and son, who I have a very great relationship with. And, I think Brett, the dad, Brett the father, Brett the husband, sometimes gets overshadowed by, gets overshadowed by Brett the businessman.
Yeah.
And that purity that comes with that side of him is something that I've really come to cherish.
I love that. Thank you so much for doing this. Safe travels getting back, and we'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your time in Vegas, and phenomenal job. Love your program.